Well, let's do our top 10s. I'll throw in a couple of honorable mentions. Searching for Sugar Man is an honorable mention of mine for 2012. Wolf Children. So this is an animated movie by Mamoru Hosoda, who is a pretty interesting director. I don't love all of his movies, but we're going to be covering one of them later in this podcast, The Girl Who Leapt Through Time for 2006.
Cool.
But Wolf Children is my favorite movie of his. Skyfall, the second best Daniel Craig James Bond movie, in my opinion. Seven Psychopaths, Martin McDonagh's least celebrated movie. I think it's a lot of fun.
Fair. I mean, I like it, but it's probably fair.
Yeah, gotta give a shout out to Spielberg's Lincoln, which I liked a lot, but didn't love as like other things. But it's Spielberg. It made my top 20 list. It's number 14 on my list. All right, so my number 10, Ben Affleck's Argo. It's a great thriller about a group of Americans trying to get out of Iran, and it's basically a heist movie because they're trying to like steal these people. This fake movie thing going on to steal these people out of Iran, and the final scene on the airplane is so tense.
And even when you know how it ends,
yeah,
even then it's still incredible.
Yeah, really good. Hate to say his name, but my number 9 is David O. Russell's Silver Linings Playbook. This movie kind of kicked into high gear my love affair with Bradley Cooper. I just think it's so much fun. Jennifer Lawrence is delightful in it. This was like a big comeback for De Niro after a lot of stinky movies. Some people think Silver Linings Playbook's a stinky movie. They're wrong.
Yeah, they're wrong.
Chris Tucker also had like a cool comeback in this. He's great in this movie. I really, really like Silver Linings Playbook, about a guy with some demons and mental problems, another girl on the wrong side of the tracks trying to win a dance contest. It's pretty fun. My number 8 is Andrew Dominic, who has been lambasted recently for Blonde, but he's also the director of the much celebrated assassination of Jesse James, Killing Them Softly, starring Brad Pitt. It's a really, really great movie about hitmen, basically. We know they don't exist, but they existed in this. Hitmen, their relationship to the mob, and Brad Pitt and Scoot McNairy, Ben Mendelsohn, and James Gandolfini, rest in peace. So great in this one. Oh, and Ray Liotta also, who passed away.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Good movie. Blonde sucks, but Killing Them Softly is really good.
Yeah. Number 7, we're still waiting for her return. It's Catherine Bigelow's Zero Dark 30. A lot of people don't like this movie because of its like jingoism, but this movie is incredible. It's about the CIA and Marines going in and killing Osama bin Laden. It stars Jessica Chastain in probably her best performance ever, and not what she won the Oscar for. I haven't seen, what is it called? Calamity Jane? Tammy Faye.
It's fine.
It was directed by David Wayne. Oh no, Michael Showalter.
Yeah.
What a bizarre thing to have happened.
Yeah, and it's a totally okay movie, and like at the end of the day, I'm fine with her having an Oscar because of performances like this. But yeah, it's an okay movie.
Zero Dark 30 is a great movie. People don't like it also just because it suggests that torture gave us the testimony that got us to finding bin Laden. Like I said, though, amazing performance from Jessica Chastain. Jason Clarke and Kyle Chandler are great in this. Chris Pratt is pretty good in a small but important role. Mark Strong, always great. Love Zero Dark 30.
Yeah, and the jingoism and all the stuff like that captures the feeling of what was happening, at the time. I mean, that's not inaccurate to say, what was happening. That's how it felt.
For sure. And the people who are portrayed in this movie are now, some of them, Twitter nightmares, who are just like the worst of the worst kind of Americans on Twitter. But like, that's who was portrayed in the movie. So people would love those people to not be portrayed in movies. What are you going to do?
Right. That's a whole different discussion. I don't want to get into it.
Yeah. I haven't seen this movie in a long time, but Ben Zeitlin's Beast of the Southern Wild is my number 6. I don't know how to pronounce her name. Quvenzhané,
I think.
Thank you. Quvenzhané Wallis is the star. She was, I think, 8 years old when this movie came out.
Sounds right, yeah.
Incredible child performance. One of the best child performances you'll ever see about this little girl living in Louisiana.
In the bathtub.
In the bathtub, which is the name of their little area.
Yep.
Incredible movie. If you want to see a girl who honestly should have been like the biggest thing, check it out. She's also, she went on to play Annie in a pretty poor production of Annie. And she's in 12 Years a Slave, but very, very small role. And the first Trolls, I guess, but I didn't know that.
Oh, I've seen that movie a million times. I didn't know that.
My number 5, am I at now? Yeah, my number 5 is Jiro Dreams of Sushi. We've talked about that a lot. I like Jiro Dreams of Sushi so much that it's in my 2011 list and my 2012 list. My number 4 is a movie that Jake mentioned earlier. It's Stories We Tell. So I guess that's one, and I should have mentioned that in my top favorite movies, but it didn't match what brings my documentaries together, because this is a movie that Sarah Polley made about her own story, finding out who her birth parents or her birth father is, and her like Jewish heritage and things like that. She's a character in the movie, so it didn't work in my story about documentaries. But An incredible documentary. Sarah Polley's an amazing filmmaker. My number 3 is Moonrise Kingdom by Wes Anderson. I think it's my favorite Wes Anderson movie about a bunch of kids at summer camp, a little boy who falls in love with a girl, well, a scout camp rather. He runs away with her. The families freak out. It's one of my favorite Bill Murray performances. It is my favorite Bruce Willis performance, which is interesting given what my number 2 is. Edward Norton's great in this. Frances McDormand is great in this. The kids are great in this. There's nothing not to like. It's such a sweet movie.
Mm-hmm.
Peak Wes Anderson for me. My number 2 is Looper. Speaking of Bruce Willis, one of my favorite sci-fi movies of all time. You've got Joseph Gordon-Levitt in a lot of prosthetics to play a younger version of Bruce Willis. It's a time travel movie where they're both hitmen and they end up at odds with each other over Bruce Willis coming back in time to kill the person who would in the future kill his wife and start this awful crime syndicate. It's a Western, actually, just like takes place on this farm, Emily Blunt's farm. And the little boy, who's played by Pierce Gagnon, might be Gagnon, but the little boy is also very good. Not as good as Quvenzhané in Quvenzhané Wallace in Beasts of the Southern Wild, but very good as a creepy little boy who will grow up to be a mob boss in the future. And you've got also a nice little side performance, tragic role for Paul Dano early in the film.
Oh, that's right.
And then my number 1 is Thomas Vinterberg's The Hunt, starring Mads Mikkelsen, about a guy who is wrongfully accused of being a pedophile and how his town turns on him, how he tries to stay sane and clear his name, which has one of the best endings I've ever seen in a movie, where even though, spoiler alert, beat for spoiler alert, he's cleared his name, the town clearly doesn't all care. I think Thomas Vinterberg is an incredible filmmaker, and this is my favorite film of his.
I love that movie too, but it was a 2013 in the States, so it won't appear on my list. But gosh, we are going to have a lot of crossover on our lists. I actually want to I do documentaries separate from feature lists, so I won't do my entire doc list, but I do want to just mention my top 5 documentaries real quick. And most of them we've already mentioned, so I won't take long. My number 5 is a documentary about the Chinese artist Ai Weiwei. It's called Ai Weiwei Never Sorry. Just very cool look at him and his art. My number 4 is a movie about the Detroit Fire Department. It's called Burn, just about the difficulties the Detroit Fire Department has gone through just with all the burning buildings in Detroit, especially in the, it came out, obviously in 2012. So it was a difficult time for that fire department.
We should mention the reason that happened. There was a ton of abandoned buildings in Detroit because of white flight and then just economic despair in the city. People always make fun of Detroit for being such a shithole. It's actually a pretty great city, especially in the last few years. It has made an incredible comeback. The icon of Detroit's failure, the train station, has been completely renovated into a tourist attraction now. So highly recommend people give Detroit a second chance. But yeah, at the time, these houses were burning down and also terrible crimes were happening in them, in these abandoned houses. So that was real. I haven't seen that movie. I'm going to check that out now.
You should, you would really like it. It's very, very cool. My number 3 then is the aforementioned Jiro Dreams of Sushi. Yeah, just an incredible documentary. My number 2 is one that I know you have seen, also called The Gatekeepers. You remember The Gatekeepers?
I don't offhand. Tell me what it's about. Maybe I'll remember.
It's about the former heads of the Shin Bet.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I know someone who was in it, so yeah.
Right. You know one of the guys. So yeah, I know you've definitely seen that one. I remember talking about that with you. Just an incredible documentary about things that I did not know anything about at the time I saw it. So really, really interesting. And then my number 1 of that year, as we talked earlier, is Searching for Sugar Man. Just a great documentary, great story, great music. Yeah, and then we lost Rodriguez just recently. So R.I.P. Sixto Rodriguez.
So Stories We Tell was 2013 for you?
Yep, that came out in the States in 2013. Yep, and definitely, I don't remember. I'd have to look. I think, then Active Killing would have been my number 1 doc of 2013. I think Stories We Tell would be my number 2. I mean, those are 2 all-timers. With my narratives, I'll mention a couple of honorable mentions, a few that made your list, like Moonrise Kingdom is in my honorable mention. Not the biggest Wes Anderson fan, but I really like this one. Very, very cool. Good Wes Anderson stuff. I love Wreck-It Ralph. That came out that year. Cabin in the Woods was that year. Looper, also I really, really like. That's in my honorable mentions. The first Avengers, in my honorable mention that year. That's a lot of fun. And there's a cool Jake Gyllenhaal cop movie called End of Watch that I feel like has been completely forgotten, but I really, really liked that movie. And then one that may have appeared on your list for 2011, but it came out in the States the next year, is an Israeli film called Footnote that I think is really very good.
Yeah, Footnote's great. That's also Joseph Cedar, who we mentioned earlier in this episode. I just want to give one more honorable mention. Searching for a Friend for the End of the World. It's a Steve Carell movie with Keira Knightley where the world's about to end because an asteroid's going to hit it, and they're on a little road trip. It's a cute indie comedy that has a sad ending.
Yeah. And then as we get into my actual top 10, number 10, Robert Zemeckis' Flight, starring Denzel Washington. I think it might be Denzel Washington, might be my favorite performance of his. He plays an alcoholic airline pilot who manages to safely land the plane during a crisis, but he does it while he's drunk. And then the rest of the movie is him kind of trying to cover that up while everyone's treating him like a hero. It's a really interesting performance and a very, very cool movie. Probably the last really good Zemeckis movie. I'd have to double check his list to make sure, but yeah, really, really good movie. Great performance by Denzel. Number 9, Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master, with just incredible performances from Joaquin Phoenix, Philip Seymour Hoffman, rest in peace, and Amy Adams. All just amazing in this movie. Very cool. Number 8, as you have already mentioned, Silver Linings Playbook. Not much more I can say about it, but yeah, I love the performances. I love that it just ends in a dance contest. A great climax to that movie. Good comeback for De Niro. Cooper and Lawrence are amazing together, and Jackie Weaver also was good as the matriarch, if you will.
I will.
Good. Number 7, Ang Lee's journey film, Life of Pi, which is some of just the coolest. Oh, you hate Life of Pi.
No, I like Life of Pi. I like it a lot, but it gave me a full-blown panic attack in the theater. Like, I'm not joking.
Really?
The opening credits, it's just a small window into how my mind works. The opening credits are just, it's a montage of a bunch of different animals, like interesting-looking animals. And I got to thinking how short an animal's life is, and then I got to thinking how short human life is, and I couldn't breathe. So it took me like 20 minutes to get myself together. No, it's a good movie.
Okay, good. Okay, I was a little worried, but yeah, Life of Pi is great. I mean, some of the best visual effects. I mean, you'll see it's just a really cool journey, through. Where
well, they're on the ocean, aren't they? The guy and his tiger on a boat.
Yeah, I'm all thrown off, and I didn't expect that was where the conversation was.
Sorry.
But yeah, Life of Pi, very cool journey, great visual effects. The score is magnificent. I mean, it's a great movie. But from Ang Lee, one of our finest directors. Number 6, one that you mentioned earlier, Lincoln by Steven Spielberg. Another masterful performance by Daniel Day-Lewis, of course. Tommy Lee Jones also great in this movie. Sally Field is very good in this. All Oscar nominated. Day-Lewis, of course, won his third for this one. My number 5, Catherine Bigelow's Zero Dark 30. Again, you mentioned all the good things about it already. It's just a really, really cool movie. We need more from Catherine Bigelow, please. My number 4 is Michael Haneke's Amour, which is just a devastating film about a husband taking care of his wife after a stroke. Beautiful and sad movie, but just excellent. My number 3, also the aforementioned Beasts of the Southern Wild. Again, one of the best child performances you will ever see, and another just beautiful, uplifting, gorgeous movie. That shot of on the poster of her running through with the sparklers and everything is just kind of seared in my brain. And my number 2, also one that you mentioned before. I'm a big James Bond fan, and Skyfall, like I agree. Probably the second best James Bond movie. I mean, Casino Royale is my number 1 movie of 2006. Skyfall is my number 2 movie of 2012. I think Judi Dench is just incredible in this. Absolutely kills it. Javier Bardem, one of the best villains ever in a Bond movie. He and Daniel Craig have that one, that one scene together where Bond, implies that he's been with men before, which I think is just such a cool, cool little addition to the Daniel Craig version of the character. And I just think and Albert Finney in this is also really great. Just a lot of cool stuff going on in Skyfall. And I love the Adele song, of course, too. I think one of the better Bond theme songs.
Second best Daniel Craig Bond movie, and probably also the second best Home Alone movie.
That sounds right. Yeah, at the end when they're setting all the booby traps up around Bond's manor. Yeah, I think that's awesome. I mean, I know it's called Skyfall, but whatever. My number 1, as you mentioned earlier, is Argo.